All right, welcome everybody to our webcast, extending the function of Sage 300 systems with Tyrox. I'd like to welcome today our presenter, Nancy Lavery from Rob Lavery & Associates. She's going to walk us through some of the features and functions, the benefits that you can do to extend what you already do in Sage 300. And we're getting a lot of requests for these kind of extended features, so that's why we thought we'd have the session today. So everybody's on a mute for this session as we're recording it. Please put any questions in the chat window and we'll answer them at the end. All right, Nancy, I don't want to delay you, so I'm going to make you the presenter. And maybe just in 2 seconds, you can just, introduce everybody to yourself, okay?
Great, thanks very much, Will.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for taking the time today. Great, thanks very much, Will. Thank you everyone for taking some time today to spend with us to review some of the Tyrox products. Just a little bit about Tyrox. The principal at Tyrox was the original developer of ACPAC for DOS that we now know as Sage 300. So he's been in the industry for quite some time. And one of the key benefits of the Tyrox products is they are written using the same development kit as Sage 300. So they do install inside your Sage 300 environment. So I'm going to start today with the Tyrox CRM product that also has a collection module. And then we'll move on to check approval for your AP payments. And then we'll have a look at some of the productivity tools. So with the Tyrox CRM, you'll notice that it installs as a module inside Sage 300. Some of you may be familiar with the Sage CRM product. This product is actually not intended to be a competing product to the Sage CRM. It's actually, first of all, the Sage CRM is more Salesforce facing. The Tyrox CRM product is meant really to be accountant type facing, where you can track opportunities or prospects, promote those to AR customers within Sage 300, but a lighter tool in terms of contact relationship management. Where the development is going now is more towards collections. So we do allow you to buy just the collection features separately. So you can purchase the Tyrox CRM that includes everything, including all the collection features, or you can just purchase the collection features separately as a separate price. When we're looking at the setup of Tyrox CRM, you have some options. I'm not going to go too far into options. I just want to highlight a few key things here. There is email capability within the CRM and within the collection features. And we're just using SMTP, so you can have an overall setting for your SMTP emailing. And within the collections, we have a dashboard that will show you overdues, which I will show you in a little bit as we move through the presentation today. But I just wanted to show you that you can define your aging buckets. So whether they're 30, 60, 90, which would be your standard, and over 90, or you can do quarterly or annually. You have the capability of adjusting these periods for your aging. And our dashboard does have color coding capability. So there's just a drill into the color picker. So you can define by color quite easily at a glance on the console where certain invoices sit. And then you can specify a template to use when you send that overdue email, and that would be the body or the text of the email. Now, we understand that, you're going to have cases where, although it's overdue, you may want to give some kind of a grace period. So, for example, on a 30-day invoice, you may want to say, I'm not going to consider it as overdue until 35 days, for example. So you can set a set number of days before it actually creates an overdue record. The records that are created are permanent records, so you'll always have a history in terms of those invoices that went overdue. So this again is an overall setting. I'm going to move over to where your customers get set up in CRM and effectively for use within the collection module, where you can set that specified number of days by customer. So you may say, as an overall setting, I'm going to allow all of my clients to go over by 5 days before I consider it an overdue invoice. But I have these few government agencies that I'm actually going to give them 15 days. So you can set by individual client how many days you want to allow them to go over before you consider it as an overdue invoice. And then the other feature I just want to point out on the settings is under the accounting documents, this is where you can specify parameters for your outgoing correspondence. So you can send your statements, you can send letters, invoices, both for accounts receivable and order entry, and an overdue payment reminder. So for each of those types of mailings, you can specify the from email address it's coming from, where replies should go if somebody replies to them, what the subject line should read, what the body of that email should read. So just an overall setting where you can specify what you want those emails to look like. But when we look at the overall basis, it's going to be based on companies. These companies are equal to either your AR customers or, in the case of CRM, a new prospect or a new opportunity. So I can add a client here. So where I have a prospect and it's not yet a client in Sage 300, I can just come into this screen and add a new client. And at a glance, you'll be able to tell if it's an AR customer. Up in the top right corner, you'll see the associated customer number. I can drill into the AR customer screen from here. I can also drill into the AR customer inquiry from here. So you have a lot of information that's at your fingertips. Now, you may notice my AR customer screen is called an extended customer screen. When we get to the productivity tools, I'll explain what that screen is. But if you're not running the Tyrox productivity tools, then it will just call up the standard AR customer screen. You can also, as I mentioned, drill into the AR customer inquiry screen in accounts receivable. So this is an overall view. I can click through the tabs, and based on the company that is highlighted within this grid, it's going to show me the appropriate information. Or I can drill into the Tyrox company screen, which is your AR customers. Sorry, I'm just having a little bit of problem here with the resolution. There we go. So this would be the standard AR customer information. As far as promoting this to Sage 300, if you set up a new prospect in these screens with a click of a button, you can set up the AR customer record. The file layout is exactly the same, so you don't have to worry about anything getting truncated or losing any information. Now, there are some additional features on this screen. Where you see a little box with a blue arrow, it means you can punch out to other programs. So in the case of the address, I can click this and it's going to take me out to Google Maps. Or I can click the button against the email and it'll launch an email for me. Or I can launch a website from this screen. And as I mentioned under the setup, down at the bottom here is where I can specify the set number of overdue days by client. So if you want to give someone an additional grace period, you can do that. You can have as many contacts as you need for each of your Tyrox companies / AR customers. And if I scroll it down to the end, you can specify by contact what types of documents you would want to be sending them. And it's just an X, so I can just turn that off if I don't want to send them AR statements as an example. So you can specify by contact the types of documents you want to be sending to them. You can link clients together. So if you wanted to do a mass mailing to multiple contacts against multiple companies, you can link those for the case of sending out a mailing. You can track opportunities. So this is where, you know, a new proposal, new business, you can track using the opportunities screen. You can link to documents. So these would be external documents. You can see it's just a link, whether it's to a website or to a network folder, for example. You can store documents. You can track cases, and for cases you have some options. You can do collection cases, so you can easily track your collections. But in the case of new business or support, you can have support cases. You can have appointments in the case of new business, or you know, contact with your clients. And then we have given you a bucket for other, in case there's something specific to your organization that you want to be able to track. And you'll notice as I go through screens, the documents and notes will appear against multiple screens. So you have the ability to link to documents and store notes against multiple screens within Tyrox CRM. There are note products for Sage 300, and not to deviate too far, but in some cases, those notes that you store here within Tyrox CRM, you could effectively copy to other screens of Sage 300 if you're running another note product. So I'm not going to go too far into that. If that's something that you're interested in, the folks at DNA can give you more information on that. The other key field here is this revisit date. On a few of the different screens, you'll see revisit dates. I'm going to show you a dashboard that's going to display things based on that revisit date. So you can quite easily get to information as you need it based on this revisit date. So for example, a collection case, you can just go to a dashboard and say what's coming up in the next day or week or month, and you can easily see that information. This product was built with the intention that you have a lot of access to a lot of information with just a few clicks. You can store notes against your companies, and you can track any communications that have gone out. And I'll just note that there's nothing in this window at the moment, because later on in the presentation, we'll send a communication. When it comes to your contacts, we can drill into any of these contacts. And this is where, again, we have a lot of information that you can store for your individual contacts, not the least of which is social media links. The idea being here that customers are going to maintain their social media far better than you can track what they're up to. So with these little buttons, you can just click a button and it'll take you out to social media sites. And on this social media tab is where you can easily add. So you can just click the add button, choose the social media that you want to link to, go to that social media page and grab the hyperlink and paste it into this window and add it. And in doing that, it will add a button on this front screen that you can then just click to get to their social media site. You can track documents that have gone out to a specific contact, as well as communications. And I mentioned that you can group contacts to send mass mailings out. So that's all available to you from a company perspective, from an AR customer perspective. I can send documents from this screen as well, just by clicking this button. I can go out and say I want to send a number of documents to these specific recipients. Maybe I want to send some AR invoices or some receipts or orders or invoices, OE invoices, and then just click the send documents and it's going to send those documents out. Now you'll notice that all those tabs that were along the company screen, you can get to individually. I was showing you everything from the perspective of an individual company, but perhaps you want to see all of the contacts that you have set up or all of the communications that have gone out. So we're giving you ways to get to your company-wide information by going to each of the individual screens. There is some charting capability, and we're building out these charts. There's very shortly, there'll be some new charts here related to collections. As of right now, though, you have a sales pipeline. You can chart open opportunities or the average time to close. Now, these are just strictly Excel based. They're pure Excel. So, you can change the size of this, and the data is just sitting on another sheet here. So just pure Excel in terms of the charts that are available. Now, when we talk about the collection features, so you do have the customer aging screen. So similar to under the setup, you can manipulate the buckets as you want to see them at any particular time. You can choose an as of date. So that's something that you can alter each time you go into this screen. So you can determine how you're seeing the information within this aging screen. And you can choose to display the information by customer or by documents. And the most recent feature on this screen is the ability for you to filter by customer group. So if you just want to see a particular customer group, you can filter. But you can specify, if there's unapplied cash or credit notes, how do you want to handle those? Do you want them in there based on the date, or do you want to just handle those as current? And the same goes for unapplied cash. Now, you can also say only show customers that are overdue by a set number of days, and then you would hit the go button and it's going to display for you your aging. Anywhere within the software that you see a little box with an arrow like this, it means you can drill into the underlying screen. So again, from this screen, I could drill into my customer inquiry, where you can view all of the open documents related to that particular customer. So this is taking me to the standard customer screen. Now, you'll notice these flags. So there are a few flags here to highlight certain things that you may want to be aware of when you're looking at an aging. If I hover over the heading of this column, it will explain to you what those flags mean. So I can see that a $sign means that a company has some unapplied cash associated with it. So you may want to go and review that before you start trying to collect from them. Where they have open cases, if you see the exclamation point, it has an open case. And when you see a question mark, it means that company has a disputed invoice, which is the next screen that I want to take you into, where you can set up an invoice as being disputed. So, a client calls you up and says, "Oh, I didn't receive those goods." So you want to put that into dispute so that you're not trying to collect from them. Rather, you want to figure out what actually happened. And again, from this screen, you can see I can drill into the invoice, into the customer, into the Tyrox company. So it's quite easy to just add an invoice. You can specify what the company name is that you want to add. Now, I've filtered this by customer number, but you can see that you could filter by any number of pieces of information, any criteria. And so you would call up that customer, and then you can drill in to see the open invoices for that customer. So you can easily choose any of those invoices, and then that revisit date. So when do I want to revisit this? So I can just put a date in here. You can assign it to a specific user, and then it will sit as an open case until that case gets resolved. So you can easily add invoices. I could then add a note here to specify why this invoice has been put on hold, so that anyone else coming in will see why that's on hold. And then when you come to your overdue invoice screen, this is the one that is a dashboard that is color-coded for you. And so you can easily identify by color. I've got my red as those that are delinquent. So those are my over 90-day, my in arrears, my late, and my past due. So it just makes it easier, based on the color, you can determine, how you're seeing the information in this overdue invoice screen. Now, right now I'm seeing all statuses, but I can say, well, I'm not interested in seeing those things that are closed, and you see it instantly filters for you. Now, what the status means, I have pending, open, and closed. The pending means that I haven't sent an overdue invoice reminder out yet. The open means that the reminder has gone, but it's still sitting as open. So I could say, well, I'm not interested in seeing the open ones either. I just want to see those ones that I haven't sent the overdue reminder for. So these are the ones. Now, in this case, you can see there's an extra symbol here, which is the @ sign, and that's signifying for me a disputed invoice. So I can see that this invoice 5 is sitting as disputed. Now, we'll say, why isn't invoice 10 showing up as disputed? Because I just set that one up, and that's because I just need to update my window. So that is something that you should do each time you come into this screen, is to update it for the most current information. And now we're seeing that invoice 10 is sitting as disputed as well. So I can say, put those on hold, because I don't want to send out an overdue reminder, because I know that they're in dispute right now. So now all I need to do to send these overdue reminders is to click, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to send them? Yes, I do. And it's now sending the overdue reminder for those 12 invoices. It will create a log for you and store that log, so you can see for customer 1105, invoice 3, these are the recipients that it went to. So you have a log that's going to show you exactly who it went to. And now you can see my window is updated to show me just those 2 that I've got on hold. It did not send the reminder for. So now if I go into a company here, and I think 1105 was the company that a reminder was sent for. So let's just call up company 1105. And when I go into the communications, I'm going to see there's the overdue reminder that went for invoice 3 and for invoice 8. I can open that up as well, and I can see the notes related to that and any comments related to that. And I could view the email. Now I'm in a demo mode, so I didn't actually send an email out. That's a bit of magic there. But in a real life scenario, you can then go and view the email that went, who it went to. You can see who it went to here. And that's the original template that I had showed you under the setup options, what you want, the information you want within the body of the email. And if you're familiar with the mailings going out from Sage 300, there's certain things that you can put in placeholders for, and it's going to fill that information in appropriately. So that's sending out your overdue reminders. And then lastly, related to this product, I had mentioned to you a dashboard. So this kind of ties everything together. So here on the dashboard, you can specify whether you want to see today, or you can just scroll to any other day. I can say I want to see it from a daily perspective, from a weekly perspective, from a monthly perspective. I can say only those things that are for me, or I want to see everything. So you'll see that there'll be a lot more information in these windows. I guess I need 2020. But a lot more information will be displayed within these windows. So that's making it easier for you to know what things that you should be reviewing based on that revisit date. So I'm going to stop there. I've taken up about half of the presentation time with the CRM and collections modules. So Will, I'm not sure if you want to do questions after each module, or if you want to just wait till the very end.
No, let's wait till the end. We'll continue on, and I'll give you the questions at the end. That's all right.
Great. Thanks very much. So we will move on now to the Tyrox check approval product. So again, you'll see the module install in the menu of modules, and there's really just one setup screen here. So what we're doing with the Tyrox check approval product is we're forcing an approval process around the posting of a payment batch in Sage 300. So you can't print the checks or post the batch until they've been approved. Now, we often get the question, our approvers aren't in Sage 300, so there's no concern there. We do create a SQL instance, and that is the approval console, so that can be accessed from a desktop. If you wanted to run it on something like an iPad, you could do that as well. So the first bit of information here is just a string to that SQL instance. It's a database that I've just called approval, and that's where it's going to send the approvals. So what happens when a user enters their payment batch? They have to submit it for approval, and the batch then gets locked, and it sits there in a pending state until the approval takes place. But there's no additional work in terms of updating that batch. It will be an instant update to that batch the minute it gets approved, and that's what this Sage 300 user and password will be used for. I've got mine set to admin. You can set it to another user as long as they have the necessary rights within Sage 300 to be able to unlock that batch. You can specify up to 3 levels of approval. So you can have 1, 2, or 3 levels of approval. Mine's set at 2. And you have a bit of flexibility in terms of how those approvals happen. So you can say all checks must be approved at all levels. You'll see in my payment batch, I have 2 payments. So what this means is both of those payments are going to go to the first approver, and then they'll go to the second approver. You can also say checks must be approved by a set number of users. So I want to nominate 3 people at level 1, but one of those people needs to approve it. So you can nominate multiple people at any level, and then specify how many of them need to approve it in order for it to move on. And the example I'm going to show you today is checks above a level limit must be approved at higher levels. What that means is what I've done is I've set the approval limit for level 1 at $2,000. So anything below $2,000 is going to go to level 1 to the general manager for approval. And anything above $2,000 is going to go to the controller for approval. And I can, again, have 3 levels of approval. So I could say the controller can approve up to $5,000, and then it needs to go to the CEO from there. So you can have up to 3 levels of approval. You can also exclude payment codes. So these are your payment codes in Sage Accounts Payable. So if we look at something like EFT, for example, you may say, well, because EFT is an automated process, I don't need to look at the EFT payments. I would rather just look at those things that a paper check will be cut for, or a wire transfer is going out for example. So you can say, exclude the EFT payments, and that would require you setting up a payment code called EFT. So, it just gives you some flexibility to kind of filter what has to be approved. The database tab is something you would only come to once. You hit the create button, and it's going to go up and set the necessary tables up in the approval console. The installation tab, you would come here when you first install the product, and you would install what we call a desktop menu control. What that's doing is it removes your standard Sage icons, payment entry icons, and replaces it with our own. Now, I'm going to go to that screen in just a minute. It's nothing different than what you're used to in terms of entering the payments. All we've done is added the control to force the approval process. So you would typically do this once. The only time you would need to uninstall it, we would suggest if you do an upgrade of Sage 300 that you would uninstall the menu control, do your upgrade, and then reinstall it just by a click of a button. Now you can specify how things arrive in the approval console. You can say, just send it all in as approved. I'm going to rely on the user to unapprove those things that they don't want to go forward. Or the opposite of that, send everything in as unapproved. I want to force the user to activate the tick box for all of the payments they want to approve. Or I'm going to set a dollar value threshold, and anything below that threshold, just send it in as approved. I would rather that my user review those things that are above a threshold that I've set. So you have some flexibility how they appear in the approval console. And for those things that are unapproved, so we do get that question quite often. It's not at a batch level, it is at an individual payment level. So any of those payments within the batch, you can specify that you do not want to approve. We're not going to hold up the whole batch. We're going to remove those ones that are unapproved. And you can specify those that I have not approved, I want you to put into a new batch. So the user doesn't have to re-enter the payments, or just remove them, and I'm going to have the user re-enter the payment at the point that we want to do the approval. So you have some flexibility there as well. And then there is an email notification capability. So I can email those users anywhere throughout the approval process. So at each level, you can have multiple people, just a comma separated. You can have multiple email addresses here if you need to. And you can specify if you want to send an email back to the person that submitted it for approval to let them know that the approval has taken place, and they can go ahead and post that batch. And again, we're using SMTP, so you would just set up the server information here. So when we go up into accounts payable, you'll see the extended payment batch. So that's our payment batch screen. So again, nothing different about how you're entering payments here. When I open up, you'll see this is just the standard Sage 300 payment entry screen. And for time's sake today, I entered a few payments that I just called May 13th webinar. And so any of you that are familiar with the payment entry screen, you'll see that it's the exact same screen. So I've set up a payment here for $649, and I set up a payment for $2,900. So what we'll expect to happen here is the first payment is going to go to our general manager for approval. The second payment is going to go to our controller for approval. Now you may notice this additional window that's popping up. That is a separate product. It's a document product where you can attach documents. I have it running here because it actually integrates with the Tyrox check approval. You'll see that these documents will be visible through the approval console as well. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, you can speak with the folks at DNA and they can get you more information on that. So what's different here, if I try to print these checks and post the batch, it's going to say it hasn't been approved, so you cannot print those checks or post the batch. So you'll see that the additional button here is this submit for approval. That button will dynamically change as it moves through the process, so I can see those ones that are approved. Ours is sitting here as submit for approval. So I'll go ahead and say yes to submitting that. And you'll see it has gone into an in progress state. So anyone coming into this screen can see that that batch is in progress in terms of approval. I can click on that and I can see the invoices that are sitting for approval and how many levels are required. Once it gets approved, I'll see who it was approved by here. So if it were partway through the process, you would see that it's sitting waiting for the next user. So an email notification would have gone out, and now I'm just out on my start menu. So here's my check approval console. So we'll open that up. And we'll sign in as our general manager. Now, for those of you that may be running multiple companies of Sage 300, you'll notice I have two companies here, my Sage sample company and my Tyrox company. So you do have an option if you have multiple companies and you have the same approver across those companies, you can filter the information into one approval console and it will appear as a tree view, just like this. Or you can set up separate approval consoles by company. That's completely up to you. So here's our May 13th batch that I created for today. And you'll notice, as expected, I'm just seeing the one invoice for $649.50. I can see the company it's drawn on, the description of the batch number, the bank it's drawn against. You know, in a real life scenario, you're probably going to have multiple payments within a batch. And as you scroll down that list at the bottom, you'll see some additional information. And this is where I'd be able to see those documents if I was running the document product. But we'll go ahead and approve this and say yes to that. And it's just telling me that it's been approved, and you notice that it will remove it from my approval console, and I'm no longer seeing it in my list of batches to be approved. But now let's log in as our controller. Who's going to have the other payment? I think I've only got one L there. So there's our May 13th webinar batch, and there's that payment that was over the threshold that I had set. And again, I could see that document here if I needed to. This return button, you know, if you have multiple layers of approval and it arrives in someone's approval console and they're not quite happy with it, they can return it to the person ahead of them in the approval process, or all the way back to the person that submitted the batch for approval. So they don't necessarily have to decline it. If I want to decline it, though, I would just uncheck that box, put in a comment and as to why I'm not approving it, and then that payment will be removed from the batch. But I'll just go ahead and say yes to that and approve it. It's been approved now. And now you'll notice I haven't run any process. I haven't had to do any extra steps. It's just updated that batch automatically for me. It's now sitting in an approved state, and I can go ahead and now print those checks and post the batch. So yes to posting that batch. And you can see it's now been posted. So that is the check approval product. So moving on to the productivity tools. So as I mentioned, the owner of Tyrox was the original developer of ACPAC for DOS, now Sage 300. So he knew where all the little nuances were within the software. And he started to come up with ways to increase productivity. How can I do a number of entries in one transaction? Sorry. So he created a toolkit by module. So for those of you that are running multiple companies of Sage 300, these extended tools give you the ability to enter an entry in Sage 300 once and then copy that entry across companies. So if you have the same GL chart of accounts across companies, I could add a new account in my source company, and I can copy that account to one or multiple other companies. So that's what these extended tools do. Again, the underlying Sage screen, there's nothing different about that. We've just added this copy button at the bottom of the screen where I can call up a range of accounts, whether that be by account number, by structure, by group code, load those into the bottom of the screen where I can see them. And this include column will determine whether or not they're included in what I want to copy. So it gives you the ability to review the information prior to that copy taking place. And in something like a GL account, if you're copying it across companies, then odds are you're going to want to substitute at least one of those segments. So we give you the ability to do that. So, you know, whether that's a division, a region in my case, or maybe you have a company segment, change that company segment from 01 to 02 when you do the copy. So you can, it gives you the ability to also use this tool within one company. Typically when you set up a GL account, you know, you're going to be setting it up with multiple segment combinations. So it gives you the ability to just go through the Sage screen once and then come in here and quickly do a copy. So once you've chosen, so I'm just going to say yes to one of these and I hit the copy button, it's then going to give me a list of the companies that I can copy to. So I can copy to one or more. And you can specify, I only want to insert new records, or I only want you to look through the target company and only update existing records. Maybe I've changed a description, for example. Or I want you to insert new records and update any existing records. So these extended tools all work very similarly. So I have this capability with GL accounts, as I've shown, also with your GL segments and account groups. If you want to create a new year or your fiscal calendar, so that would be the opening and closing of your fiscal periods. The extended customers we saw when we were looking at the Tyrox CRM product, the extended vendors is similar capability where we're giving you some, you know, we call them smart finders. They would be more like you would be familiar with say, a Google search, where you see field labels, a button over the field label. It means you have more Google search type capability. So I can start to just put in some characters and find, and it's going to look against multiple screens, multiple fields, to return the most information that it possibly can. So in my case, I put in SE, and it's looking at not just the vendor name, but you can see it's looking at the remit to location. It'll be looking at the addresses. So it looks at multiple fields at once to return a lot of information for you within that search. You also have that punch out to Google Maps, launch an email, go out to a website, and you have multiple contacts. So without the CRM, if you wanted just to have multiple contacts for your customers or vendors, these extended products can do that for you. Now Sage is coming out with a multiple contact product, and what we've done in that case is if you activate the new Sage multiple contact product, then whatever you have in this screen is just going to automatically copy over for you. So we have that extended capability for your inventory items, your inventory locations, your item pricing, your IC segment codes, and your ship via codes. So for those of you that are running multiple companies and you just want to be able to copy across companies, we created a multi-company toolkit that gives you all of these extended tools. But if you want to purchase the toolkits by module, then we've added those extended tools into each respective module. So you have some flexibility how you're purchasing these tools. You can purchase just one toolkit, or you can get a bundle price where you get all of the tools. And in that case, we've given you this option screen where you can specify which tools you want to be able to see within each module. And further to that, if you don't want to grant additional access in Sage 300, then you can just copy any of these icons into the folders in Sage. So for example, I could copy this extended vendors into the vendor area within accounts payable. And so the users will just have an extra icon that they can access. The vendor inquiry, similar to what you would be familiar with the AR customer inquiry. We've built a screen that has 20 different tabs that contains pretty well any piece of information you'd want to see related to a vendor. Some of the toolkits have a mail merge tool. So what this does is it puts Sage 300 together with Microsoft Word so you can do mailings. So I could do a mass mailing to my vendors. I could do a mass mailing to my AR customers. There's a payroll toolkit as well. So I could do a mass mailing to my employees as well. And then the latest tool in the Payable toolkit is the ability for you to have more than one payment batch open, which is something that you don't have within Sage 300. Under my accounts receivable, we have those extended tools. We also have an apply document tool where it makes it very easy for you to match up unapplied payments, whether that's credit notes or wire transfers, prepayments. At the top, I'm seeing those outstanding payments. At the bottom, I'm seeing open invoices. Now, I've got this, I didn't filter this. You can easily select these by customer number, for example. So I'm only going to see open payments for a particular customer and open invoices for that customer. Or maybe you want to do it by document date. You have a number of ways to filter the information in this screen. And then it's just a matter of saying, well, there's customer 1100 and here's customer 1100. So I want to apply that. And you see it change to a yes. So you can go through and do that and hit the process button, and it's going to create your receipt batch for you. So just an easy way for you to apply any open payments against open invoices. The mass billing, I always tend to use tuition as an example here. At the beginning of the school year, the school is going to issue tuition to 1,000 students, and it's the exact same tuition. So with this, you can put in a batch description, an invoice description, choose an item number and a price, and then I can select a range of customers, and then I can click the load button. It's going to show me the customers in that range, and again, I can specify who to include. And with the click of a button, it will set up all those AR invoices. Under the general ledger, in addition to the extended tools, we have this accounting status tool. So this gives you a bird's eye view of all of those things that are open in Sage 300. So when you're going to be processing your month end, you can easily see those things that are not completed, those things that are sitting as ready to post, and those things that are not posted. And you can click in and see the underlying details. There's also a user management tool. Now, if any of you have tried to find out the permissions that a user has within Sage 300, you'd realize pretty quickly there's no easy way to do that. So with this tool, you can specify all users, a range of users, or one specific user, whether you want to see across all of Sage 300 or just certain modules or a specific module, and you can load the information. So let's just say I'm going to look at the controller and I can load the information here, and it's going to show you the module, the permissions in the module, and the access that user has. So this is not a great example, but typically across the top you'll see all of your users, you'll see all of the modules and the permissions and what access a user has. Now, there is also a full-blown tool, we call it SOX User Management, where again, if you're using multiple companies, you could run this report across companies. So you can see the access that every user has in all of your companies. On the other side of this tool is what we call a user management tool. And this is where you can copy user permissions. So Will's a new employee, and he's going to be doing the same job that Nancy does. So I want you to just grant Will all of the access that Nancy has. And it's not just the permissions by module, but things like your user profile, your customization directory, printer settings, process flows if you've set those up. So you can copy everything about a user from one user to another. In the full-blown tool, you can say, Nancy has this access in company 1. I want her to have the same access in companies 2, 3, and 4. And again, with a click of a button, you can copy those permissions across companies. Within inventory control, you can delete old records. You can, a stock reorder tool. So if you're using the stock reorder in Sage 300, where we improve upon that is you can generate requisitions. So you can do purchase orders or requisitions, but more importantly, you can view the information. So if you're using that tool in Sage right now, then you would know that you basically click the button, it goes ahead and creates the purchase orders, and then you have to go and see what it created. So in this case, we're giving you more flexibility to review and choose whether or not to include in creating the requisition or the purchase order. You can specify whether it's just below the minimum value, or you can set your own criteria to specify how you want to generate those. The other thing is you can export this. So you can run it and you can save it out to Excel and pass that sheet around, and maybe people want to make some changes to it, and then you can re-import it back into this screen and then run the process for it to create either requisitions or purchase orders. In the PO module, you can set records to complete. So if you're struggling with, you have a bunch of purchase orders sitting out there that are never going to be fulfilled, and you want to set them to complete so they drop off reports, you can do that. You can delete old purchase orders. Now, if you want to update purchase orders, so something has changed about a purchase order that you've issued and you want to make changes. So, I've bought this item, and the expected arrival date is changing, so I want to see all purchase orders that have that item on it so I can update the arrival date, or the vendors changed the cost, so I want to see all purchase orders outstanding for that particular item, either a specific item, or you can create a list of items, and it can update a number of purchase orders in one go. You have that capability as well on your order side. So you can update multiple orders at the same time. So you can update, you can see there's a lot more features in order entry. I would say the order entry toolkit is the most feature rich of all of the toolkits in the productivity tools. So you can update a kit or BOM number, you can update the expected ship date, you can update prices, you can substitute an item. I'm no longer selling this item, but I know I have open orders for it, so I want to see all open orders that have that item on it, and I'm going to substitute it with a different item. Or there's been a delay, so I need to put some orders on hold. Now I need to take those off of hold. I need to update addresses. You get the idea, but again, you can call up the list in this bottom grid, specify which ones to include, and then process them all at one time. You can do the same for shipments. You can update shipments. Now shipping orders. So, I was waiting for that item and I got that item in. That item's ready to be shipped. So I now want to see those orders that have that item on it. And again, we give you a lot of flexibility. So only orders that can be completely shipped, or I'm just interested, I want to see all orders that have that item, and so on. So you can ship a number of orders at one time. We do give this delete orders, delete quotes, or set orders to complete. But I'm going to close off today with the extended order entry screen. So there's a lot of features on the extended order entry screen, and I would venture to say that this is, you know, you probably are going to replace this standard Sage screen with this, although you don't have to, but by replace, I should say you'll want to use this screen. So first off, you'll notice there's the smart finders are appearing here. Maybe I'll just call up an existing order here. All right, let's just start a new one. Oh, okay, we'll go to order one. So I'm just trying to get all the buttons to light up here. So when you're looking at an order, the first thing to mention is this order from history. So based on the customer that's been called up on the existing order, you can go in and see all the previous orders that that customer has made with you. So again, this button tells me I can drill into the underlying previous order, but I can also just scroll through and I can see what was ordered. And if I wanted to include it on my new order, then I could just say include, which it's not going to let me because I've picked a posted order, but I would just double click to say include and click the order button, and it's going to bring it onto my new order. I have an item finder, so it's a smart item finder. If you're familiar with entering orders, then you would know that you typically have to choose the item and bring it into the order before it'll tell you that you don't have any quantities on hand. So that's the first thing. We're telling you the quantity that's available in all locations and the quantity that's available in the location you've chosen on the order. So, you know, for example, if I picked this hanging folder, there's none available in the quantity, in the location that I've chosen on my order, but I can see that there is quantity available in other locations, and I can click into that and see the quantities that are available in the different locations. So that's the quantity of the item finder. There is order margin capability, so I can click the button and see the overall margin as the order as a whole, but I can also scroll down the lines and I can see the margin at the line level. So I can see where my margins are sitting for any particular item. I can print OE forms from here. So rather than going to 3 or 4 different screens in Sage 300, I can just click my order confirmation, my quote, my picking slip, or my invoice from this screen. If you're using kits or bombs, this component button, when it's lit up, gives you the ability to look at the components within a kit or bomb and maybe substitute. So you could add items or take items away, or just add an additional component, and it'll be just for the one order that you've done it. It won't change the underlying kit or bomb. You can create your purchase orders from here. And again, we're just giving you more information and more flexibility as to how those purchase orders get created. You can specify what information you want to send over to the purchase order. And you know, you've just got a lot more flexibility here. So very feature rich. So that is what I wanted to cover today. We're right at 1 o'clock, so I've stayed within my time limit, but I am happy to answer any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Nancy. That was great. I know there's a lot to digest here. They're very feature-rich products that many of our clients, who, especially ones that have been using the system for a while and have grown, they find them very useful, and we're adding them every day. And there's features, especially in today's world, that help you better automate and do things, especially when you don't necessarily have access to people to ask or approve. So we do have a few questions. Just let me go through them here, Nancy, and actually I'll probably just I'll just pop my screen up here again.
Sure. One last thing I just wanted
Yeah.
to mention. If you go to the Tyrox website, there is a video page where there's a number of videos here. And most of the productivity tools, there's little short videos that show you the tool and what that tool does. So if you wanted to go to tyrox.com to the video page, you know, it'll give you a lot of information there.
Thank you. I was going to mention that too. So I'm just going to pop over here. Give me 1 second. Make myself the presenter. I'll start the show again. So let's just go to the Q&A here. I'm going to just read them off to you, Nancy, and you can probably answer. We are a bit over time, so I'll start back at the beginning where we talked about CRM. Is there any access to CRM outside of Sage 300, like the web?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah, so that's
It is mainly accountant type facing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the differentiation between people who want to have a fully web-enabled CRM like Sage CRM and just be able to have CRM type functions with the, you know, tracking opportunities and cases, or as you showed, the you know, the collections and just more info about your customers and vendors right inside Sage 300. Of course, you can do remote access as people are doing today through terminal services or, you know, a remote desktop or go to my PC, and you could still use that. So you still need to be a Sage user to use Tyrox CRM. And somebody asked, can we add more info to customers and vendors like optional fields and tables? I can't recall, did we mention that?
Meaning, is it compatible with the optional fields?
Yeah, I think so.
Or would
I think
like replacing optional fields?
No, you know, can we extend use it and use the optional fields as well as obviously the multiple contacts that we discussed? I think it's probably the question. Like it works with optional fields in Sage 300, correct?
Yes.
And then
yes.
I'll just say there are other tools that we can use from products that Nancy represents, like Extender, optional tables, where you could potentially even expand on that. Correct, Nancy?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And is there any limit to the contacts in Tyrox CRM that you can add to a company? And that would apply to if you're just using multiple contacts on the productivity tool side too, right?
Yeah, there's no limit there.
Yeah. So if you're, you know, if you want to list a location or a person or a delivery, you know, area and contact, you can do, it really lets you do all that, as well as, you know, emailing out different information and things like that to multiple people. All right, let's go over to the SOX approval side. Is there, I don't think we went over it, is there an email alert that you can tell somebody they have something to approve? Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So it will send email notifications throughout the approval process.
Yeah.
And you can optionally send an email notification back to the person that submitted it for approval.
Okay. But you
and if you had multiple people at a level, then you can just comma separate it and add multiple email addresses here.
Perfect. But you still need to then go into the console to approve it.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so that answers the next one, which is basically I need to be a Sage 300 user to approve or not approve. And yes, you do.
No, you don't have to log into Sage 300 to approve. You have to be set up as a user in Sage 300, but logging into the approval console is not logging into Sage 300. It's an external approval console.
Oh, perfect. Yes, you're right. So thank you for clarifying that. So that answers that one. That's great. And let's just go over to productivity tools. Someone asked, can I delete old orders and quotes with the tool? I guess they saw that the icon. We didn't really have time to go over it, but that leads me into what Nancy showed at the end there, which was if you go to if you contact Mike and I, or you go to the website, where those videos are at Tairox. You can see all the features and functions. There's nice little short videos that Don's been good enough to do. Yeah, that's one of the big features I think a lot of sales and distribution clients use, is just cleaning up some of the clutter for orders that maybe, you know, there's something that's never going to be finished and the shipping of that order because it's just not available any longer, and they didn't back order it, they just create a new order, and it's kind of hanging out there. So really can help, you know, declutter and clean up your order entry, your purchasing, all those things that Nancy showed. So we're a little bit over time. I won't keep us. Those are great questions. You can absolutely email us with any more information. Michelle or Mike at da.ca, or myself, Will, at da.ca. Mike and I are
muted. Unmuted.
Mike and I are
muted. Unmuted. Muted. Unmuted.
So we're happy to provide info, and I will be sending out an invite to everybody or a link with the recording of this video. So I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us. Let us know if you have any questions, and have a great day. Be safe, everybody. Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Will. Thank you.